To CBS Sports Radio 1450 The Hall, and LeBron James, the big story, always in sports, again in the headlines, and this time it's because he has another decision to make. LeBron James has the opportunity to opt out of his deal with the Miami Heat. He has said that he hasn't made a decision yet, and he also said he won't think about his decision until he comes back from vacation with his family. But he doesn't have all that long to think about it. Deadline to decide whether or not he's going to opt out of that deal is June 30th. It would make sense for LeBron James to opt out of the contract in the sense that if he does, along with Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, if they all opt out of that contract, they can sign deals that are going to be team-friendly to the Miami Heat, allow them to build around those three again. Dwayne Wade's certainly not a max player anymore, but what I'm here to talk about right now is there's no reason LeBron James should be leaving the Miami Heat. They're in the East Conference, a very weak conference. If you look down the line, they're the team that the other teams are still going to have to go through. If he jumps to the Western Conference, it's going to be very difficult to make the NBA Finals. You just look at the top contenders in the East this year. The Pacers, they were thought to have a chance. They had that huge first half of the season, then fell apart after the All-Star break, still grabbed that number one seed, but were really a shell of themselves throughout the playoffs. They took the Heat to 6 games, but Roy Hibbert was just pitiful. Lance Stevenson could be gone. Paul George doesn't look like the 1A type of player that we thought he was going to be. They have no true point guard. Lance Stevenson filled in at that point guard and really did a lot of the creative stuff on the offensive end. Other than that, there's really no other team that can compete. Maybe the Chicago Bulls, but do we know what we're going to get out of Derrick Rose? He's been injured. He's missed all the time the last couple of years, so you don't know what you're going to get out of him. So if you're LeBron James, you look at the Eastern Conference and you say, you know what? This is the conference that I have the best opportunity year in and year out to go back to the finals. The 3 seed this year was the Toronto Raptors. I mean, they have some nice players, but they're certainly not
Miami. They're not Miami.
They're not Miami, and they're not a team that you would think has the caliber to compete for an NBA title or an Eastern Conference title, really, for that matter. Washington Wizards, another good young team. John Wall, Bradley Beal, a team that came into its own last year, but still a team that you would think wouldn't have the guns to compete with Miami. And then you look at the other side, and you just got to think, why would he even consider jumping to the Western Conference? Let's just run through the teams that were in the playoffs for the West this year. Dallas was the 8th seed. They took the eventual NBA champion San Antonio Spurs to 7 games. They still have Dirk Nowitzki. They have a great owner, Mark Cuban, who's very invested in making that team better, and you know he's going to try to do some moves, make some moves to make them relevant and contenders again before Dirk comes to the end of his career, and his career is starting to wind down. Dirk actually came out and said, we'd love to have Carmelo Anthony, his name being floated around. That's another discussion. Memphis, they took the 2-seed Oklahoma City Thunder to 7 games. After a 10-15 start, they finished the year 40-17. This is a team that went to the Western Conference finals 2 years ago. A very, very viable basketball team. They were the 7th seed. Golden State, Steph Curry, good young team, new coach coming in with Steve Kerr. Portland, Damian Lillard, LaMarcus Aldridge. Houston, they were a title contender. Dwight Howard, James Harden. The Los Angeles Clippers, the 3 seed, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin. Oklahoma City, they're not going anywhere. Kevin Durant, of course, on that team. Russell Westbrook. And then, of course, the San Antonio Spurs. And then another stat that jumped out at me, during the regular season, the West, they were 283 and 166 head-to-head in interleague games, interconference games against the East this past season. So if you're LeBron James, yes, Dwayne Wade isn't what he used to be, not a max player, but still a very good player in flashes. We saw it through the first few rounds of the NBA playoffs. Didn't have it in the NBA Finals, but through those first 3 rounds, a very good player, very capable player. Chris Bosh is a guy who fits perfectly into that offense that they run down there where they spread the floor, has become a reliable three-point shooter. So if he stays there, takes a little bit of a team-friendly contract, because let's be honest, he makes boatloads of money off the court. He made $19 million on the court, $38 million off the court. If he stays there and works within the framework of what Miami already has, he has the best chance to win more rings staying with the Miami Heat.